Hello, reptile entrepreneurs. This is your host, Bill Strand. And today I bring you an entrepreneurial journey of Khai Phan. Khai is a monitor breeder who has found that he excels at breeding grasshoppers as feeders. And now he ships grasshoppers to the states where he has permits. And more than just a discussion with someone who's a breeder and starting a feeder business, Khai is at the point where his business is growing out of his available space. He is at that point where many of us find where to grow, we need to invest. And when we invest, we are risking. And so, when's the right time to invest so you can have success? Please join me in welcoming Khai Phan to the podcast, and let's hear his story. Hello, reptile entrepreneurs. This is Bill Strand, and I am here with Khai Phan. Khai, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate you.
Now, Khai, you've got a very interesting business arrangement, and I think it's best I'm just going to let you share how you integrate grasshoppers and monitors.
Really, when you get down to the nitty gritty, I was just working with and kind of mentored by people that were really hardcore into the hobby. I guess one of my first mentors would be Susan James of AdCam, right? And I literally was like her water boy for a few years. And I got to see how she fed her chameleons. And obviously she just wasn't, with all the chameleons that she had, she wasn't buying them. She was producing a lot of her own feeders. Nowadays it's more common practice to see people breeding their own, things like that, and their feeders and what they put back into their their own collection. But there are still quite a people that buy, and so I myself was working under, and I guess doing things for her, but I was also working for a small reptile shop that was called Sizable Reptiles. This is all when I was pretty young, really like my early teens, and I was basically volunteering, things like that, just offering my help and just inching my way into the hobby any way I can, right? And that's where I basically picked up in a sense business and also the own hobby myself, where you're looking to produce something to resell and things like that, and so it's not just breeding and keeping for myself, and I was making a return off things. And so that those two things, they're learning from people that were just amazing to watch them flourish in what they were doing, and for translate into what I do now, I really try to embody almost just about everything, where I'm being self-sufficient as I can, trying to work with whatever I work with, I'm basically putting my all into it, and that's where the grasshoppers and the monitors really kind of etch together. Not only are they, obviously a food source, but I needed to produce something that wasn't just rodents or, I guess a more heavy fat protein, right? I needed something more lean. And for my monitors, because I don't keep much of the large stuff, basically mice and things like that make them obese or fatter much faster. And the grasshoppers basically was just something that I was playing with off and on for quite a while, just catching stuff, for years, catching a few things, trying to do the right, or thinking I was doing the right thing, maybe even getting as far as eggs, but never really knowing what to do with the eggs, and then also raising the baby was also a pain. And so really I didn't get into it heavily until about 3 to 4 years ago, where a local that I was I also known for quite a few years through the Sunnyvale Reptile store, all that stuff like that. He was a customer of mine when I ended up taking over the store, all that stuff. And he eventually came to me at the Sacramento show, and he's like, hey, I got some grasshoppers going. I just caught them. And basically, what do we do? He's getting them going. And so we're just working that together, just like that. And I started incorporating them with my Kimberly Rocks and my other monitors that were basically getting quite obese on the diet that I was feeding them at the time. And from what I was doing several years ago and what I'm doing now is entirely different on I guess just complete, what you're putting in is what you're getting out type deal. I'm trying to put the best in as I can. And these grasshoppers seem to be on the, I guess, as far as well balanced, something more natural for a lot of the lizards that we have. Um, they would
Okay.
make up quite a bit of the diet in the wild, things like that. And so, as far as what I'm producing, they're also a 3 to 4 inch grasshopper, which is quite a big bug compared to
Yeah.
even a large dubia or a hisser, right? Pretty good size. But the shell ratio is a lot less compared to those larger insects, so you get much more meat compared to the shell.
Okay,
And
so you got started with grasshoppers to have a more healthy way to feed your monitors. Is that correct?
right, and it all just really started just like that, where I was, not trying to feed my Kimberly rocks so heavily, and the other bugs weren't really doing it, for in my opinion. And so once all of that kind of just overlapped, where me and Dean met at the show, talked about grasshoppers, my failures, his basically achievements, and then we're basically that, I guess, connection right there is then lit up again, where me and him are regularly
Okay.
conversing about the grasshoppers, things like that. And then my monitor stuff was just my own, right? And I just do that for myself, and I'm more really into monitors than I was a bug guy then. And so really learning and having to achieve and being able to do the grasshoppers did have to take some mental work. I myself, I would say, just failing better than trying to get it, the next few times, things like that. You end up learning from your mistakes, trying to do better. Getting the right species is also a major key as well. But yeah, once I needed to get my Kimberleys on a better protein diet that wasn't so hefty and making them fat, that's when I started producing them more, and it was really just for myself, right?
Hmm.
Now, if we with the timeline, I really started breeding grasshoppers in 2017, 2018, right? And then we got basically a good year of me producing them roughly, but that was just for myself. But then once we get into 2019, 2020, that's when COVID was everything, right? Basically,
Yep.
that's where the world, kind of went haywire for a little bit, where things, uh, people weren't selling at pet stores, so people weren't getting their food. You'd have to buy online. There's already a mess with the online shipping, dead crickets. So basically, people weren't really satisfied with what they were getting as far as crickets and roaches. And so I basically was able to tap in on that market a little bit. I was just selling a few to here and there with friends, things like that, or selling to Reptile Factory and a couple other places. But for the most part, um, it was only just my extras, right? I was still
Okay.
mostly just using it for myself. But yeah, it just began more and more. I started adding more adults, and really, the the fluctuation of customers just went up. Word of mouth, things like that, and just as far as the whole uh, popularity or the the excitement factor, or even just their animals finally eating.
Okay.
All of
Now
these
you've
basically caught flame. Yeah.
yeah, it's obvious that you've taken it up a level in seriousness where you've gotten approval from the government to ship. Uh,
Right. Now that process was pretty hard. I've only really gotten my permit for the last few months now. Um, I would say Mayish or April, May, something like that. Now, really, it's all by state. It is it is still illegal. It is still needed to be permitted. Now, it's going to be very complicated in how I explain this, but basically, it's by species and by state. So the species
Okay.
has to pass the species, and if it's native to there or if it's not going to cause a problem, most likely an okay. But I've also had some states that basically told me no, like
Mm-hmm.
Hawaii, stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I've had states surprisingly tell me yes, like Florida, which has some of the most, ridiculous regulations, right? So, I'm also permitted for Florida. Now, really, again, it's just by species and by state. But there are a couple, I would say, free to go species that are out there, right? And essentially, they are your differential and I believe your red legged grasshopper. Those guys are completely unregulated and you can ship those and everything like that. Just the only problem is getting them and also producing them. Um, Being that they are a diaposing species, so these eggs basically need to do what like silkworm eggs do. They need to be put in the refrigerator for some time, go through that winter stage essentially, and then once coming out of there, they basically hatch out of there. With these eggs, that's where the tricky part really
Mm-hmm.
lies, where getting them to actually hatch out and all that stuff like that. So, I have quite a few species that I work with. Just about all of them mask the entire United States, so I'm able to ship just about anywhere. Now, I really try to be as best as I can, really good with what I'm doing. Honestly, there's just so much. It's so new still. I'm just learning. It's still a learning thing for me. I've really only had everything for just I would say a few months now, really getting into the part of understanding, and they've even some states changed their mind after 2 months. I think after maybe reading it over again, they may have just approved it with a blind eye quickly or something like that, and then they read
Okay.
over and basically just said, "Hey, like, um, we weren't we weren't realizing what you're doing." Things like that. And I basically
Okay.
told them that I'd be shipping grasshoppers to customers and they'd be disposing of them. Now, on the protective end, um, things aren't as free game. I myself can do whatever I want. I can, sell to you or to whoever within the right state, right species, stuff like that, right? Then, um, but they can't do anything with them other than dispose of them.
Okay.
So really, if you'd want to be protected, just like myself, be safe and everything like that, a lot of us have a business. So, most people see this as something that you can capitalize on. I understand that. It's common nature in this business. So, but for me to be responsible as being one of the first guys to be able to do this, I do want to preach that you would need your own permit and your own approval to even resell. You'd be able to dispose of them yourself,
Okay.
utilize them for your own, but to do anything further than that, you'd need permission, essentially.
How much do you support people purchasing from you to try to start breeding just for their own personal use?
Yeah, honestly, I can't support the whole United States, so I'm really trying to blanket more and more and more as people are interested. If they can do it for themselves, and really, it's getting it to the is the first part. Getting them to
Mm-hmm.
hatch and all that stuff like that. It is kind of tricky. There is a learning curve, or it actually isn't. It's not so much of a learning curve. It's a commitment thing, because they are just work. So I think anybody can do this. I've had a young high schooler do it in 2 months, and I've had people that are really well established do it in a couple months.
Okay.
So just about anybody can do it, but your commitment level and how you're able to respond to when things are happening while they're flying at your face, that's a whole different thing. Yeah. So, I don't want to sugarcoat anything. I want to make sure that people getting into this, because I would like to see this flourish. Again, being one of the first guys, I don't want to hold this back from its growth. Me and trying to control everything, control everybody. I'm not going to waste my energy doing that. I want people to see how these are helping their animals. It's not just,
Mm-hmm.
again, it isn't about just money. I do like to see people's animals adapt better that are from wild caught collections, stuff like that. I like to see animals, females, do better. Um, I like to see animals that are lethargic and typically not a great eater all of a sudden eat in front of their owners, you know? These are all the things that I essentially live for when I send grasshoppers, you know?
Yeah, grasshoppers are an incredibly attractive feeder because they're one of the few feeders that's diurnal. And now I'm talking to the audience. You obviously know all this,
Yeah.
but like chameleon people like me, but this is of high interest to people like me because I'm feeding my chameleons nocturnal insects. And
Right.
to be able to feed them grasshoppers, which are diurnal, that's a game changer. So
Right.
I'm excited about this opportunity.
Yeah. And, you know, it really is just, again, commitment, staying per- pretty persistent with what you're doing. I wouldn't, micromanage everything. There is certain things to follow, a certain time frame, and then if you're not hitting that time frame with the marker, then we can, then again, go over stuff. And I do quite a bit now, and I probably won't even really stop. But I still offer a program where people are able to pay for my assistance through the whole thing. You purchase a group, ship it out to you. Prior to all that, I'll walk you through everything you need to know, help you get set up, understand what you need to do, what you essentially need to do on a day-to-day basis as far as logistics, and then your return. All that. People, I mean, for myself, I was also, man, I was surprised on how fast those cages basically overrun within 2 to 3 months. And you just, the return and the life cycle is very fast. Like if you were to compare these with a similar size insect, which would be the dubia or something like that. Let's just say another popular bug, right? We know for a fact the dubias take a few months to be mature, from the very small one to the very large female. And even the male, it takes quite some time. These grasshoppers, I can get from very tiny baby to a fully winged female in 4 weeks. So the time frame on that is just utilizing a species that you can utilize fast, 2 to 3 weeks, because you don't even need to have them 4 inches yet. You only really need a bug that's only 2 inches maybe to have a satisfying meal. So that's 2 weeks there. That you grew something, fed it just consistently. Now they do eat a lot. Okay, I will not. Sure, they do grow fast, and I am keeping them warm, but I also am feeding them like how you would imagine locusts are destroying some crop or something like that. Picture what you see as far as scary pictures, and there's just locusts destroying a tree in your yard. They're doing the same thing to what I'm feeding them. They're basically going through this whole thing. I throw in food, they destroy it within a couple hours, and I have to replenish that. And that is where their consistency lies.
So, what is your intention for this as a business?
So I myself was, because of COVID, I have asthma, and there's basically the whole scare of me, being out there too much. I just basically started working at home, and I was now do the grasshoppers and the monitors essentially full time at home for the last year and a half now, ever since COVID started, and it's all just literally because of COVID, really, because having to stay home, obviously the mandates, things like that, me being scared of getting myself sick because I have asthma, and then I also live with older people as well. There's just all those are all added to why I basically took a step back from working outside and then managing the grasshoppers, but also that time frame, the demand for them took off.
Yeah.
And I myself now am still growing now. Really, realistically, I don't know if the government will just let me go full blown, because that's a bit much, right? I think they just perceive me as just a small hobbyist just doing it for fun, right? And I still kind of am comfortable that way. I do work quite a bit. Don't get me wrong. My schedule is quite full with just grasshopper stuff alone. But let's say I now have 20 cages, right? If I were to put on 40 cages, or another 20, and have 30 to 40 running at the same time. That'd be quite a bit of work. I would have to definitely hire people, things like that, and get more people on the ball with what I'm doing. So those logistics haven't exceeded themselves where now things no longer make sense. I still have space for everything, time for everything, making sure that I am also, what I hate to do is have a lead time. My lead time now is roughly 1 week. It's not really much of a lead time at all. I hate to push back customers, make them wait, take their money, make them wait, all that. I just rather have you just message me when I will have them ready, or if you're really interested, I'll message you when I have another group essentially ready. Because I do have a fast rotation, everything is ready within 5 days with 1 week. You may have purchased it Tuesday, I'll have it ready that next Monday. And that's just because they grow fast. I'm also very consistent, and I have quite a bit going at once. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, let's jog on over to your monitor section. How much is your monitor breeding actually? How significant is the monitor breeding as far as your income?
So, all right. Man, I would say not as much as the grasshoppers, because that's persistent almost every day, right? But when the monitors do come in, and I do move them out with a reasonable time and everything like that, I really don't spend a whole lot on waste of cost and food, within a month or so, like that, right?
Okay.
I make a fair amount on Kimberly Rock monitors, and I also I produce. It's not the fact that they're expensive; it's the fact that they're captive bred, and then that's what adds the ticket onto them. These are $100 lizards when you buy them wild caught at a show, but captive bred, they're much different. A lot of people want to support captive breeding, and so they would prefer to pay the dollar that I asked for. So it's on its own. It makes, and it adds up for itself, because they are costly lizards, and I charge several hundred to maybe even almost a couple thousand for them. And so per animal.
Captive hatched animal, or do they hatch?
Captive bred animals, yeah. And captive bred monitors are rare. So what I do with the Indicus stuff, and Indicus are just mangrove monitors for the guys that are just really paying attention, maybe not understanding all the scientific names, but for these mangrove monitors that I produce, I am one of very few in the entire world, and then very even smaller numbers in the United States. Probably only just it's really just me right now, and there are a couple parthenogenic stuff that happens, and that's what happens regularly, and those are the other gentlemen that are hatching them out as well. But I'm breeding them, and I've also taken a parthenogenic animal that I produced, raised it up, bred it back with its mom, and then also made more babies. So I was also able to prove that the parthenogenic part on monitors, because there are a couple different nuances as far as parthenogenic goes in animals. So it's not all just females, per species, right? It's quite different. And so for monitor lizards, they basically end up male for the parthenogenic typically. And then I took that and was able to prove that was viable enough to breed and have viable sperm to have eggs and all that stuff like that. And so it was still just, I guess, a theory in science before, where these island endemic monitors would wash to a new island where their species wasn't, and then populated that island just from that process alone of parthenogenesis. And so I'm the first gentleman to actually prove that with my animals and then get them going. Yeah.
Congratulations.
So really, the mangrove stuff or the indica stuff alone, people love them. They're very highly desired animals, but they're very hard to breed and keep. Very difficult to understand and things like that. So that's what adds to the rarer factor on them. So,
all right.
And,
so
yeah, it's just basically have the both of them going on at once.
so going forward, do you envision keeping monitor breeding and grasshopper breeding long term?
Man, that's a question that has been jumbling back in the back of my head. every day. So, truth is there's only 24 hours in the day, and I'm
Yeah.
already cutting thin on 20 hours of it, because I sleep, because the grasshoppers need to be fed so much that I feed them for 4 to 6 hours worth of food and then replenish that in several more hours. So I have so much time to only either do whatever I need to do, which is still keep up with customers, add more customers, promote yourself, do whatever you need to do for the day, right? And then find time to rest in between all that time, and then do it again, and then do it again for a few hours of the day. So honestly, for my monitor fans that love what I do with monitors, the grasshoppers have been taken over in time and energy and everything like that. Don't get me wrong, I still am very persistent and consistent with all my monitor stuff now, but when things grow and there's only so much time again in the day, I would either have to hire somebody or something like that to really continue to grow further. Right now, I'm already at a good capacity. I produce quite a bit and is able to supply the current customers that are asking without having such a lead time or, just tapping out of space, which I'm already running close to pretty thin on. So that'd be the next move, would be an actual building that made everything make sense. Space for the refrigerators. Food is the one key thing. Like I'd say, grasshoppers couldn't just be fed wet dog food and greens like roaches could be, or chick feed and greens, right? Very simple diet. Your waste of greens goes to them. The chick feed costs very little. But these grasshoppers, they need a specific diet, and because they're a diurnal bug that does bask and runs pretty hot for me to grow them at the rate that they're growing, they need to eat a lot, and they have to eat a lot, and they have to eat good stuff, where I couldn't just feed them only romaine. I have to add more to the food, and now I use dandelion greens much more, just because as a whole, dandelion, the plant from the flower to the roots, are a very nutritious combination of everything. And so that's why I use that in addition to the romaine. So don't get it mixed up. I use both of them at the same time, not just one or the other. One would be missing the other's component. So dandelion greens, very, very good and nutritious, but not that much in water content, right? Because the leaves are smaller and thinner. But romaine, much more water content. But we know, in fact, that romaine only has so much nutritional value compared to dandelion. So the two of them together basically make up my need for feeding them a lot and keeping them hydrated while I run them so hot. Now that's the balance that I'm making sure that I keep up with.
All right. It sounds like this decision may be in the short term. You may have to make a decision soon.
I essentially am now. Just looking for the right place. I think the right makeup. I also want to do this for a little bit longer. See how just numbers flow. I don't want to just jump the gun. I want to be able to make sure that I do things progressively, slowly and progressively as the steps need me, there to go to the next step.
Well, let's explore that. What is going into your decision to make that jump? Because you're at that point where the next step is a big one. And we're starting to talk about commitment here.
Right. And so now it's essentially deciding to move out all my extra monitors, anything that isn't producing, paired, or just taking time and energy, right? Space as well. So that is there. But really now it's finding that room that will let me do grasshoppers without a question. That it's like, you tell them, hey, I'm moving in. I want to move in next week. It's fine. But you tell them you're breeding rats. It's like, oh, what? What are you doing? And so that has been quite tricky, right? But I also recently only got permitted. I waited for that. I wanted to do things right. I don't want to just jump the gun again and just do things and have to shut down, waste all this money when I don't even have the permit, right? And that permit was a big success for me. Don't get me wrong. It took a lot of effort, a lot of failing, not knowing how to do it properly, getting rejected for just the mistake, right? And then having to refile redo everything, pay for everything again. They make you run through those hoops for a reason, for the complication of you not wanting to do it. And so if you're willing to go through all those hoops, and after all the headache and mess that they run you through, it's worth it if you're, if that's what you want to do. But, if you don't want them to go into your place and you're very shy about people coming over, things like that, and, they're going to run through your stuff because that's the things you signed up for, and you're also doing something that is very new to the United States. Regardless of what's facts, even let's say like the species won't survive in the Northeast because it's too cold over there, right? Something like that. They don't care. It's a grasshopper, a big bug. They've seen what it done to the plants back in the days, when they released those ducks or whatever they needed to do, right? So they learned what grasshoppers and locusts essentially did then. And so it scared them now. And agriculture and food is a big scare for our own country as well, because we want to make sure that we're able to feed ourselves and everything like that. And scarcity or good rich food, just good food alone is hard to come by nowadays. That's not tainted or whatever. And so the government's really protective on that end, and I understand that. So I don't want to be stepping on anybody's toes and do things the wrong way, or even piss off the people that I'm communicating with regularly just because I can't sell in this state or they changed their mind on me. I just take it. And yeah.
All right. So at this point, what is your current outreach? How do you communicate and find? How do you communicate and find customers?
Everywhere. So if you're online in 2021 and you're not utilizing Facebook and Instagram or even TikTok or something like that as a form of advertisement, if you want to have your own business, right? And if that's something that you're looking to achieve, those are free advertisement platforms that you can utilize. All of them. YouTube, all of them. And so I myself didn't really realize it until I started making money off of them. I just come here to play around, come here to post pictures, joke around, you post memes. Take it seriously if that's what you want to do, because you can basically turn your whole life around by advertising yourself and staying committed to what you're really trying to do, right? And so I would just post my own videos, or I can have people share their own pictures and videos of them utilizing my grasshoppers. But one chameleon group probably has several thousand members in it. And you just post it once. You don't have to reach several thousand members. You just need to hit 20. That's all you need. You just need to hit 20 people. And you're probably going to hit more than 20 people just because of the fact that people are going to be interested. And you're not going to hit every time. You're just going to try to shoot and try to make it every time. That's why I may not make it with every customer that I am coming into contact with every time. That's okay. But there are people that do purchase, and those are the ones I'm grateful for. The other ones I just take it with a grain of salt, move on to the next person, and really, try to engage with the next person, not really waste my time on someone that may not have been interested or something like that, or didn't like the actual price or something like that, or, also because it's so new and I myself am kind of new with this and everything like that, people themselves are cautious. There's a lot of scammers out there, and I understand people are definitely, I would say, very aware of just anybody coming onto the scene. You want to basically have a name, a footing for yourself, and things like that, and basically try to have integrity with how I work with customers. And even if it's not my fault, it's UPS's fault or it's the weather's fault, I'm just gonna send them a box on me. Just take care of it. LAG is covered. I'm not gonna ask you for pictures. I won't be on your case about this and that and number count. I just want to make you happy, make your animals happy. This is what we're here for, and just continue what you're doing. I honestly believe that that right there, bickering with people it's not the way to handle business, right? And I just want to make them satisfied with what I got. And even if it is USPS's fault or FedEx's fault, it's my choice to choose that carrier, and they messed up, so I'm going to take care of what I need to take care of. Some people even charge you to repay the shipping. I just take care of that for you too. Just, you've already paid for it once, so I'm gonna take care of that for you. Make sure that you're satisfied on that end as well, because having you pay $15-20 more dollars or $10 more dollars or whatever, how much ever shipping is, it is inconvenience out of them. And so I'll eat it, take it, and just move on with the next customer, and hope to carry on just like that.
So it sounds like working over social media is working pretty well for you. Right. Do you have any plans to get an e-commerce website?
Right. That's the next goal. I really had to communicate with the gentleman more. I wanted to see how things were going as I grew with this. Right. At first, it was just again, it is still only maybe 50 boxes a week, something like that, give or take. It really just depends on the week. I think if I were to go into more higher volume, basically hire people, put people underneath the payroll, all that stuff like that, then I would definitely need to get into more of like something more appropriate, so that way everything is covered. That again is still a big thing. I prefer to really kind of stay not on like the down low, but I just don't want to get too ahead of myself with where the growth would be. I guess it is still one of those it's one of those things where it's not just like I just started anything and I have to really wait for this approval. There's been prohibitions against this type of stuff, or more so of regulations that are strict on these things, where I'm essentially ahead of the now fighting that prohibition and regulation against those grasshoppers. So I'm now at the forefront, basically going step by step, taking all the precautions that I need to take, putting myself at risk, for the hobby to really get these that everywhere is using in these other countries. Europe and stuff like that use them. People in Asia use them. Some people in Australia use them, but really, Europe and the UK and all those guys out there can just get those locusts, and it's like the best feeder, and we don't get those here, and so it's been some type of effort. I really wanted to bring something new to the table, definitely.
All right. Well, you do have a rare outreach in that you have the Monitor Keeping podcast. How does that fit into your plans?
As far as you mean the podcast goes?
Or is that just something you do for fun on the side?
Yeah, it's just something we do for fun. So wholeheartedly, I care about your animals. I care about my animals. I care about the hobby. I care about where people take it as far as when we go, learning and the new generation of keepers is a little different. It's not that they're all wrong or something like that, or what they're doing is messed up. It's just, I think some of them lack some of the critical thinking skills that we had to do without all the equipment that is available nowadays. All the available stuff nowadays takes out all that hard work sometimes. And so you do miss some of those things where you'd be really getting into when you're putting elbow grease into everything, and you're actually getting down into the feeding and spraying and doing everything by hand still, sort of, and where the generation goes with caring about these animals and money. These two things are what run our business, right? And what run everything that we're interested in. Even if we love the animals so much, we couldn't do it without the money. It's just facts, right? But you can easily mix the two and basically get all, I would say, messed up in your morals and how you run things and how you treat animals and how you take in money. You get what I mean? I think some people can definitely see the money factor only think about that, take care of the animals, very bare minimal, sell dead, dying stuff. You basically have very poor morals on how you take care of these animals and how you dish them out to the world. I want people to really see you can get down to the nitty gritty on taking care of them to the core of everything, and to nurture the hobby itself, where the monitor thing and the podcast comes in. We lose females every year. People lose gravid females or growing into adult females barely being able to live a year or two because of most people not really understanding. Now, not all my podcasts are intertwined or only about gravid female monitor lizards, but it's about the whole, I guess, homeostasis and making sure that there's a whole well balance on the monitors themselves, being healthy animals, hydrated, having and understanding what they need as far as when they go through reproductive processes and things like that. The females themselves basically are underestimated and then not taken care of correctly because you don't think that they needed 2 by 2 by 2 or 4 by 4 cubic feet of soil. They actually need quite a bit because they're such large animals, right? And so these practices aren't always preached or always talked about. So in the podcast, I try to always relate to helping someone else's animals, and really that's what people take away from it. I hope hey, how can I help my animals do better? How am I failing here? I kind of get down to those points in that podcast.
Okay, now I'd like to do a little bit of a jump. We've been talking a lot about the entrepreneurial side and the business side, but another part of what I try to do with this podcast is encourage people to create content streams, podcasts, YouTube videos, blogs, website informational. And so I would like to jump out of the whole business aspect and explore a little bit about your podcast. And could you share with the audience what benefits having a podcast has done for you?
All right. So, again, try to do some type of niche work here where it's not just, hey, we're just going to talk about monitors. I try to have some type of goal-orientated podcast where people hopefully will take something from it. Like, I don't know, let's just say nesting females again, or it can even be diet, right? Something like that. And we try to get into the good, bad, and ugly about it, reach people that way. People already associate me with breeding monitors and having stock and things like that and the grasshopper stuff. So it is another avenue for me to essentially promote myself and plug myself for free, right? But in a way, I'm really just conversating and just conversing about what I'm doing, and people catch on to that, or they'll really get interested on what I said, or even they're already trying right now and I said something that clicked for them, and they'll message me and goes from there. And it can even be something like they just congratulate me, right? And that'll just feed me more to do more good stuff for the hobby, right?
All right. Now you are part of the Morelia Python network,
right?
What went into your choice of going with the network versus being independent?
Oh, so this is not. I don't want to take credit for that just the podcast at all. Eric Burke, the podfather, and Alan Stevens, my partner in crime here, they actually, or Alan came to me first, and we really just talked about how we want to run this podcast, and I told him I wanted to be professional as I could be, and at the same time still have some fun, and things like that. And then that was taken to Eric, and we basically got it off the ground that way. And I appreciate Eric for basically, he takes care of everything for us essentially,
okay.
And so don't get me wrong.
So what are the benefits of being part of a network?
Okay, so I actually haven't, if for anything like benefits that what I've gone other than The
Oh, I mean,
notoriety,
like,
the customers, and all that stuff like that, right? Is that what you're talking about, or benefits
uh,
just from actually being on the network?
honestly, I've never been part of the network.
Oh,
So, is it outreach, marketing, editing, or taking care of the technical background? What When I do a podcast, I do a podcast, I record, I edit, I load it up, I take care of all the show notes,
right.
do
Yeah.
everything.
So honestly, I'm just speaking into the microphone, coming up with content for the whole podcast itself, not just myself, me and Alan.
Hmm.
And we kind of come up with the sort of how the podcast we want it to sort of go. Even talk to the people that'll be on. These are the type of questions that we might ask you, things like that, and hopefully they'd be okay with how in depth we would be willing to go as well. Um, but yeah, I'm really just on the microphone. Eric is doing quite a bit of everything else. I believe
Okay.
there's a couple more people on his team, but he's doing the editing and things like that. I'm just there for content. Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. All
Yeah.
right.
So, but benefiting and all that stuff like that and growth from that, because, we've only really been doing it for a few months, right? I think we started in like spring or something like that. Maybe even a little bit before that. But yeah, it's only been a few months really getting it off the ground. And we've got, I think, maybe almost, almost 2 dozen episodes running now, right? Maybe like good 20 episodes, and all on different things, different species. Yeah.
What are your hopes for the future of the podcast?
Oh man, the future of the podcast. I really hope that what it really does is help people produce more in captivity. That's what I hope for the podcast in itself to do for other people. Really, we're just going to max out on all the species that we can do, all the different pains that you go through as a keeper. We're working on a sort of series of episodes now where we're basically talking about all the don'ts and all the horrible stuff that happens, shipping
Mhm.
issues and all that stuff like that, egg hatching issues, dying females, things like that. So we're always trying to reach people in a different way and really getting down to the parts of that people are sort of ignoring. They just want a big puppy dog lizard.
Uh-huh. All right. Well, let's bring this back, and we can close up. What message would you have for today, people in the reptile community who are thinking of stepping up and having a breeding business or starting a feeder business or any sort of business, any sort of entrepreneurial venture?
All right. The, I have to come at you from two sides because you can't really see it as one, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier, where you really want to look at these animals still. They are living things. It's not just a pair of shoes or a book on the shelf that you're trying to resell. Um, Going with that, money is also a thing where you're gonna do what you're going to do out of love and what you like and interest, but some things also need to make sense. Where you're not just running yourself into the ground, running yourself and your home into the ground just to keep your thing alive. You want to make sure that things are affordable, things logistically flow, and not just you spending all your loot or poorly saving or just buying a bunch of stuff. You want to take care of things and do things the right way. It's going to take some meticulous out of your thinking. um, it will require you to fail a little bit, and you basically etching into success. It's not just going to come once. It rarely ever just comes once like that. You'll basically etch your way in every time, fail better, and get the process going. And hopefully, when you don't quit. Now, I myself have been doing this for quite a few years now. I was just playing around before. I
Mm-hmm.
literally, even though I was having fun, and I was even making a little bit of side money on my regular side job. My regular normal job. This was just side money, right? It was just paying for the gas or I loved it and it made money. So it's like, I'm just going to keep doing it. Right. Yeah, it'll grow. And if it becomes something else, you want to make sure that it's done respectively. And that's all I can really recommend as far as a new keeper coming into the game or wanting to get into this more in depthly than what you have been as just a regular simple hobbyist having a couple pets, yeah, so get in there, get your elbows dirty, don't take the cheat way out. Put your time in there, and you'll be able to see your successes and hopefully reap some reward with it. And if not, you'll be able to at least have fun and learn. You know, just don't take, just don't look at success or money at the end of the road being the only ticket as far as what you gain from everything.
Mm-hmm. Khai, thank you very much for sharing your entrepreneurial journey with us. And I know you're at a stage that many people find themselves, and we've all been there, and people will be there again. And I really appreciate you sharing your experiences of being there right now.
Yeah, I appreciate you for having me on. Thank you very much. And feel free to message me whenever you're ready and all that stuff like that.
You know what? I think I'm ready to try some grasshoppers.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you, Khai, for sharing with the reptile entrepreneur community. And to you viewers, I want to thank you for being along with us. There's always something that we can learn from someone else's journey, and we can see ourselves in certain points. Please share any thoughts or conversation in the comments below, and I will see you next time. Take care of yourself, take care of our reptile community, and let's see what we can build.